Yep.
Okay. So I added two agenda items to this meeting. So basically, it's the SQL change we're gonna make on containerizer part in near term, which is like very likely we're gonna land these patches sometime this week or next week. So the first one is a pretty simple one. So right now we, to enable each SQL subsystem like CPU and memory and the others, we rely the user to consume the isolation flag, agent flag, and by specify each SQL subsystem they would like to use in their agent configuration. And now some people might they expect the auto detection of the SQL subsystem, which means like they're gonna read the kernel config file on the host and then find out like what are the supported SQL subsystem and which range of them are enabled by default by the kernel, and just specify and then consume those subsystems automatically. So we come up with an new option for the agent flag, so which is isolation equal to SQL all. So if the user specify the SQL all for the isolation, so all the available SQL subsystem on this machine gonna be enabled for Mesos. And the semantic here, it is backward compatible. And if some people like they specify SQL OR and SQL CPU, and if the SQL OR is SQL/OR is specified, all the other subsystem is gonna be ignored, which means we always detect the host file system SQL, and then all the other specified SQL will be included. All the other subsystems specified or not, it will be included. Depends on what's available on this machine.
So hold on, just if I do cgroup/all and cgroup/CPU, it's going to give you an error, or it's going to just be enable all subsystems?
So the current semantic, it is like the SQL CPU going to be ignored. We still just do SQL all. If the user specifies SQL all, we will just do SQL all.
Okay.
That's the current semantic. We think this is backward compatible, and then we think like if the user specifies SQL all, they supposed not specify the others. If they do, the other are gonna be ignored.
Okay. Can we give some warning on something like this? I mean, I will be fine if you just do an error. That if you use all, you should not specify any other things. Or at the very least, give a warning.
Yeah, I think I need to take a look at the code right now, but I can add myself an action item to double check. So I think a warning might be more explicit to the user.
Warning is not explicit. Having an error is explicit, telling the user, say, hey, this is not correct. Please fix your configuration.
Okay. Yeah, I think it is an action item to consider.
Is the patch merged?
I'm gonna do it sometime today or tomorrow. It's not. I did not finish yet.
Okay.
Yes, and another semantic change we have for the SQL all, it is the perf event. So previously, the old semantic we have for the perf event, it is like if user want to consume perf event and do sampling on some event, they have to explicitly specify what events they are by using this agent flag, and they also need to specify the SQL perf event subsystem. Only if they specify both, the perf event subsystem gonna be enabled, and but this is a kind of conflict with our current SQL OR new option, because some people they want to enable the subsystem, but they may not want to do the sampling. So we add another semantics. Is it semantic? It might not be kind of semantic, because this perf event, it is an optional string of the agent flag, and only if it is specified, we will consume this perf event subsystem. But now we allow the perf event agent flag to be none, which means if it is none, and if the user specify either the SQL perf event subsystem or the SQL OR isolation option, they gonna enable the perf event subsystem and turn it on, but they will not do any sampling if they don't have any events specified by the user. So this is not this is just like another change to compare to our previous behavior, because previously if you don't specify perf event, we will just return an error. Now instead, we don't return an error, we just enable a empty perf event subsystem. So this change allow us to get rid of the dependency of the perf command line version. So previously, I remember we checked the command line version to be with a minimal version, and now if we don't do sampling, we don't rely on that. So this another change we gonna make. Yeah, basically it's just very simple, small feature. Any questions about auto detection on SQL subsystem?
Okay, just one suggestion. Can we make sure all these are in the changelog and upgrade.md?
We already did in our chain. So we update all the agent flag and agent configuration doc, and we upgrade the table in upgrade doc, and as well as we add a very clear semantic change in the upgrade.md. Yeah, I think they are already on the reviewable patch. We could take a look if necessary. Okay. So this is the, yep, I think we could move to the next one. We only have 2 agenda items today. So the next one, it is this container specified SQL FS mount. So the motivation of this, it is like the user expect they could have SQL namespace and under one single container, inside of one single container, they could only see their own SQL, and they could not see all the other container SQL. And there are different ways to achieve this. So the most straightforward way is like just clone a new SQL subsystem, but it is not supported by some of the old kernel like CentOS 7. And alternatively, Docker have been doing this for a while. They just by mount the SQL, the sysf SQL to the container, and for each of the subsystem, and so which makes the container itself can only see its own SQL. So this is a very hacky solution, but unavoidably we have to do this for some old kernel, because for most of the user on production, they are still using some kind of the old kernel, and they can rely on this hack. So I think we list all the possible solutions here. As I mentioned, basically there are 2 of them, and so in this way, because it is a hack, we start to introduce a new agent flag to control this behavior, and by default it is forced, which means by default we don't do the SQLFS by mount on Mesos, and we rely on a new agent flag. We did not decide the name yet, so right now we name it as SQL enable container specific mount. This agent flag. If it is specified as true, Mesos gonna do the by mount for the container SQL from the host to the container, and the container will no longer be able to see all the other container SQL on the same machine.
Hi, Jason here. So so sorry I didn't get much time to comment on this talk, but I proposed them this ticket, and I was having kind of more a comprehensive thought about this. So it's this agent flag is more configurable, and there are several levels in here. So basically, you can allow, for example, cgroup specific mounts to be in there, point one. But that is actually one of the options, and you should have also other options directly by mount all of the cgroups in there. So just what others would see, and then there will be optionally one of the flag or one of the partial flag in there, marking it as the read only or something, and by default it's not mounting to be backward compatible for with our existing offerings.
Jason, could you rephrase again on these two options? I am not totally getting it.
There are three options right now. So by default is the the flag is off, and just like what we have right now. So cgroup doesn't show up inside of containers. And option two is just like the Docker way, and we can discuss how we configure this, right? So maybe the Docker-ish or container specific, and then just does it in the Docker way. That's option two, and that's already what Chen's been mentioning. And then option three is by mount all of the cgroups inside of a container, and then optionally would have a sub flag of RO to mark it as read only. So that's option three. Yeah.
So what's the difference between 2 and 3?
So number three is actually by mounting all of the cgroups inside of the container, just plain. In a vanilla way, so you don't make any changes to that.
Yes, I know the option 3 is what Docker currently doing, right?
Option 2 is what Docker is currently doing. So by mounting all of C groups and then hiding kind of namespacing and then only down to the C groups the container pits are in. So that's a Docker way, right?
I see. So Gilbert, I think I think what Jason said is you have three options. One, there's no C group mount at all in the container. Number two, you have C group mount in the container, but those C group mount will be exactly the same as what you have on a host.
Yeah.
And number three is what Docker does right now is they by mount a corresponding C group to the root of the C group hierarchy, subsystem hierarchy.
Right. This way, actually, we can also weave in more comprehensive logic in here.
Yeah.
For example, I'm detecting C group namespace. If C group namespace is already available and there's no, it doesn't make sense to follow the Docker way.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. At least have these. I see that it's possible that some container wants to have no C group at all because they don't interact with C group. Some container wants to have C group, but it wants to be the same as host.
Yeah, so this actually, there could be some of the use cases in this for this. For example, the more privileged containers, and they will use this. And likely, I can put this comment on the doc. Saying like likely we could have a agent flag somewhere. Sorry, like a container info flag, for example, in Linux info, whatever, and saying this is the privileged, and that means for this particular container, and it's allowed to set as to visit all of the C groups from the host.
And so one more question about the number option 3. It does not have dependency on the option 2, right? It is totally a new agent flag to control.
So an agent flag first, and this is like the agent specific for for the default flavor of container launched, and then there could be an optional like container info flag, and that one's kind of specifying what particularly this container could be launched with the visibility to C groups.
I also think that it kind of makes sense to have both agent flag. In the future, we can add the container info, Linux info, like some field, so that the container, so the framework can customize per container behavior on that.
And I think for this, what I would foresee here is also the agent flag also dictates what that container info flag would make sense or not. So
I think it's similar to what we do for capabilities, right? So I think the operator agent flag will override. Well, I think there's a relationship between like if you specify both containers C group setting and also the agent control on that, then the code will need to decide which one is going to override the other one. Like
So either it fails them or it gives them an error and still gives you something, and I think we can do that. So the agent flag is kind of a gatekeeper for what the capability of the container info flag.
Hey Jason, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hey, this is James. I'm pretty negative on adding the container flags, especially for the 0 case where you don't want it at all. So I struggle to see a downside in having a sensible default, which is attach the C groups for the container. I can see that you'd need for certain kinds of privileged containers. You want to optionally on a per container basis. Give that visibility or control of all the system C groups, but I really don't see a case where adding the C groups would break something or would be a terrible idea.
I'm not sure I fully follow your position here. You're saying like we don't even need this feature at all, or we can.
No, I'm saying you should just give rather than having additional agent flags, we should just make the C groups for that container available inside the container, always.
But what about read-only versus rewrite? And also, I think there's a difference between option 2 and option 3.
Rather than having.
Hello.
I kind of agree. Like
which one's option 2? Which one's option 3 again?
So option 2, my understanding is option 2 is you see the same exact C group mount as the host, as if you're just forking a mount namespace and you haven't changed anything. Option 3 is you do the Docker way, basically mounting the corresponding C group, like /fs C group memory, Mesos /container ID to /sysfs C group memory. So the container C, the root of the sysfs C group memory is essentially the corresponding C group on the host. You do a bimount like this, so that.
So the difference is between seeing.
Sorry. Basically the difference is whether you can see the C group hierarchy root or not. C group subsystem hierarchy root or not.
The difference is whose C group you see or where it's mounted.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is where it's mounted or whose C group you see. Which one's visible?
I don't follow this question, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, I think I get what James was saying for the first one. So James was saying like by default we should enable all of the C groups, to all of the containers regardless the fashion it was by mounted. Is that correct, James?
Well, I guess since we're talking about these three specific options, we should list them in the doc in the way we're talking about, so we can review. That'd be helpful.
Sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I'm into like I'm a comment in this document, sooner, but prior to the meeting. But yeah, I can follow up and then let's discuss about this later.
So Jason, Jason, if you can comment on the doc like hopefully today, so that we can have a consensus on that ASAP. I think otherwise, I think it's gonna just block Chan on this work.
Yeah. I'll do this ASAP.
So yeah. I think like my position on this is that. Unless there's a good reason, we should kind of make things work, make things work by default. So I don't want to have to add new options to get new features unless there's some really good reason that
I think I agree
adding the feature by default would break things or be troublesome in some way.
Yeah. I agree with James. By default, like we have an internal patch that enables all of the C groups that as them, read only to all of the containers.
In the Docker way.
Not in the Docker way. So we still use them the default C groups, and then
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess in our use case, we need a Docker way.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and then
I think like which one do we pick as default is. I feel like there definitely needs to have a knob somewhere, either in the container info. Maybe we don't need that agent flag. We just go directly to the container info, Linux info way. But anyway, we need a knob because I think some of the container need read-only access to the C group. Some of the privileged container need read-write access to the container to the C group. Yeah. So we definitely need some knobs somewhere.
Yeah, I think the knobs should be around visibility and access control. So I can imagine a knob where a specific container might want to see everybody's C groups, all the C groups on the system. And I can imagine a knob where a specific container should have like write access to it. Although that sounds a little wonky. I don't know I'm not sure if there's a use case for anything except the agent really writing to the C groups.
So writing, I think that would be a use case for some of writing. I think by default for all the system, the C group system trees, probably write access is not the best idea. But for the container specific, I can see some of the more system use cases could be using that.
But can you say like for the root you do read only, and then for the specific C group you do rewrite?
Yeah, so maybe like like an option here being auto, that's a default, and then that bymounts them that bymounts in the Docker way, but then automatically detects them a C group namespace if that's the case.
Yeah, I think I like this way. I think the Docker way should not be the standard. I think if we have C group namespace support, then we should just go that way.
Right.
And then we just leverage secret namespace. If we don't have secret namespace, we fall back to the Docker way of doing bymounts. I think for this option, I think we should just go towards that direction. But I think we still have to have a discussion on like what those knobs will be look like in the API. Because I think maybe we don't even need to do this. We pick a reasonable default, and we adding this support in the framework API to allow framework to customize, because eventually I think framework wants to customize that. Yeah. Different container have different use cases and they want different modes.
Agreed.
Okay. Since
let me comment on the doc. So sorry, I didn't get much like bandwidth into this.
Yeah, since for if we decide to go that route, we might need to introduce more API in this decide doc, and for now it might be simple, but I don't know what it looks like yet.
So how about this? Like we can do this in the phased manner. First I'm gonna introduce the default in there, and the new default of agent flag in there, and then we can have a second follow-up ticket that adds the container info level of support.
I think James' suggestion is we don't even have that agent flag, if I understand correctly. Just pick a reasonable default and just do that.
Yeah, that's my suggestion.
I like that too.
If you're going to also, if you end up doing it based on C groups namespaces, then I guess there would be an isolator to enable.
So if that's the case, is it a semantic change? Like is there any current user they rely on like watching the other containers still in one container?
I mean, it's a semantic change, but like for the better.
I guess it's not semantic change for the container that have rootfs. It's a semantic change when the container is running on the host file system because they have access to those C group directly previously. And then if we, depends on what the default will be, right? If we choose a default to be on the Docker way, then it's gonna break them. I think that's a good point that we might want to.
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay.
I think it's not a semantic change for container that has a rootfs because we don't do anything previously, nothing. Is there adding more C group now is not going to break them.
Yeah, so but if you have a container which doesn't have a rootfs,
then it's a breaking
none of this applies, right? Like you're not going, as far as I understand the proposal, if the container does not have a rootfs, we're not proposing to put it in a mount namespace and remount C groups. Right?
No, that's not true. I want to do it consistently. Like if we say we want to go with the Docker way, I don't want the container to see other one C groups, then I think even if the container on the host file system, we just still do a bind mount to hide the root C, the C group for other containers. Just
that sounds super wacky. That sounds like then you have this weird intermediate state where you have a container which doesn't have a rootfs, but it doesn't have the hostfs either. So it's sort of, what is it? It's not well defined.
But I think you're saying like we tie the host FS to C group FS together. But I feel these two are separate things.
Well, what I'm saying is that I think a container either has a rootfs or it has the hostfs. It shouldn't have a quasi bits of both. Like you can imagine a container which has the hostfs and its own /dev or its own /proc and everything, but once you start building these intermediate states, it becomes very hard to, even talk about what you have. You don't have a container. You don't have a
but it's not exactly host FS, right? You can have host volume that you can hide those. You can use bind mount to hide those directories. That, for example, the CNN isolator will just hide those etc resolve.com and just rewrite those etc resolve.com using bind mount. So it's not exactly the same as the host FS.
I can kind of reflect on how systemd would do those things, and systemd would actually have some kind of protect flag, and that would actually bind mount some of those things as read only or even hide them for the tasks with or without pivot routing. So. I think we can consider this as a reference.
Yeah, what do they do for C groups?
So for C groups, I don't know how they do that, but they do have some sort of kind of ACLs for this purpose, and they probably would hide it or something. Let me double check on that.
Yeah, again, I think this is a case where it adds a lot of complexity to the implementation and to the documentation to like all the operators, but is it really adding a lot of value? I think if you can say we have a container and that's a well-defined notion, that's great. Mm-hmm. But all these intermediate states are really hard to explain and hard to use, and they just add complexity for everybody.
Yeah, just FYI, so right now the implementation is already like kind of complicated because even for the option 2, for the mounting the sysfs C group to the container, we have 4 different cases. Like we need to handle like with image and without image. And for this 2 case scenario, we have to handle like the default executor, a command executor. The command executor is a hack, but for the default executor like nested container, we have also we also need to like do a 10fs mount, because after the sysfs mount, if we don't do a 10fs mount, we could not like mount the sysfs group to the container. So the current implementation is already complicated, so I don't know what it's gonna look like. But for now, we make the behavior consistent as like what G mentioned. We make like without image, we make it like all see the same C group inside of the container.
Gilbert, I think let's iterate on design docs. And
yeah, I agree.
Please comment on the design doc. I think it's not an easy API that we can figure out right now, and we need to have some discussion on this.
Yeah, I think maybe we should align on the design doc. So, Jason, do you think you have time to add comments?
Yeah. That would be simple. I'll do it today.
Yeah, and just maybe just not comment, just modify the documentation, and then we could sync up on the Google Doc for the more option, and then we could decide whether or not we need a new agent flag and whether or not we need to define consistent behavior for with or without rootfs later.
Yeah, I'll put like the whether the C groups would be added as a default as an open question there, and likely we're leaning towards like having C groups for containers with root file systems.
Yep. Sounds good. Yeah, I would like to like push this forward, because we internally in our product we need to consume this feature in near term. So
sounds good.
Yeah, and I believe it is also a high priority for you guys, Jason.
I mean, yeah, it is. When we tend to actually package many of the these related features into the next release, so we can get rid of my previous a quick hack.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do this.
So I guess one last thing, I'd be more convinced about the host file system if we had a plan to kind of make it consistent across all the different isolators or different things we do. So if you could say you get the host file system, but say devices and C groups and procfs and all these other mount namespace related things work consistently, then I think that would address my concern about complexity.
I do rethinking about that. I actually have a good point about keeping the host file systems. So keeping like the C groups, if the container actually shares with the host file system. So for example, it's running systemctl. Systemctl actually read the C groups kind of religiously about determining all of those things. And if you kind of namespacing them into their own C groups, and then systemctl would fail. G?
But systemctl by definition is either working on your container, in which case it's the container, or it's working on the system.
Yeah.
So what's the point of running systemctl in some weird hybrid mode?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so systemctl, if for example, like one container actually uses the host file system, and then it runs the systemctl as a sub process, and if those container like mount points are kind of namespaced into its own C groups, and this way systemctl would not work well.
Yeah, I think we kind of conflated the host file system container use case. I think we have different use cases for that. Like, for example, one use case has nothing to do with the host file system. I just want to launch some Java applications. I don't use any of those file system dependencies. I have my own dependencies, but I don't want to use container image because it's a Java application I'm running. I don't need a container image.
Right.
So for that use case, it probably makes sense for it to see its own dedicated C group without seeing other C groups, because otherwise Java will be confused.
But that's not even a use case. Like if I want to run Java and I want to run, and I have, there's no dependence. If you're saying that that you want to run something which has no dependency on the host file system.
Yeah, I just have a URL that I need to download to run. That's a
So
Java.
you can run, if you have something that has no dependencies, you can just as easily run that on something with a generic container, or as you can on something that is the host file system. So it's not a requirement to run the host file system. It's just, I don't know, like.
But the running on a container require like pulling images. I don't want to go through that hassle to deploy some container registry. I just want to download something from S3 or HDFS and just run it.
Yeah, I think let's put
That
this
super wacky.
in the doc. Put this discussion in the doc.
And even you could even address that by just having a default container, right? So
yeah, I think that's one option.
Here's our,
yeah, I think that's
one
one
on the host. You have here's our official default container, and you could even generate that using you can even generate that default container from the host using like the code we have in the test suite, for example.
Yeah, I think that's one option, like using a default container for those use cases and restrict the host file system access to only those privileged containers that do want to interact with the host file system, like using systemctl or doing something, something interesting with C groups, something like this. Yeah, that's one option for it, but I think that's probably a lot of work. Yeah, but I think I do like this direction though, like having a default container for those applications that don't care about the file system is using, and restrict host file system access only to those privileged containers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more consistent we can make the containerization experience, the better off the user community will be.
All right.
Yeah,
let's iterate on the doc. I think this is not something that we can figure out right now. I need to do more thinking too.
Yeah, it sounds like not something we could finish. I admit it is a good idea, but we need more discussion on like what it looks like and how to define semantic for a standalone default container with or without access to a UFS.
I'm not saying like we should do that right now. I'm just saying like this is kind of sounds like the right direction, but we can do that in a phased approach where we can do something first and then gradually towards that goal. And I think the design doc should figure out that exactly the phase, like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. What's the eventual goal? Something like this.
Yep. Sure. Yeah, I think for the design doc right now, we only focus on the JSON's option 2. What we currently have, like just by mount SQL from the host to the container. And I think we could just follow up on this design doc for the other phase, and so that we could consolidate the plan, what we're gonna do, whether or not we need a new agent flag, and do we need to change the default semantic.
Sounds good.
Yep.
I think it's best for us to have a table here. I'll create a table here and then list out all possible combinations of the scenario.
Yeah, that will be awesome. Thanks, Jason. Okay.
I have to drop off, but thanks everybody.
Yeah. Thank you, Jens. See you then. So do you have any? So I think this one is a pending one. We will get back to this design again in next meeting. And do we have any other agenda item you guys want to discuss? We still have like 70 minutes. NJ, I think you already get started with the SecCount design. So, but I think we just get started like 2 days ago. Maybe we could have some proposal next time, or the time, or like 4 weeks later, after 4 weeks after, about the SecCount discussion on the working group meeting. Okay, so since like we don't have any other topic to discuss, so thank you for all joining the working group meeting. We will see you 2 weeks later.
Thank you.
See you guys.
See you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.